Hello, I'm Don Ward, Chief Executive of CIB, and welcome to another episode of CIB in Conversation. CIB, Conseil International du Bâtiment, as the name is in French, is the global network for collaboration in research and innovation in the built environment. And a big warm welcome to everyone joining us, whether by video or podcast. This series, CIB in Conversation, is all about meeting the personalities behind leaders in the world of built environment research and innovation. And today, our guest is Abimbola Windapo, Professor at University of Cape Town, South Africa. Abimbola, hello.
Hi, Don. How are you?
Hello. I'm very well, thank you. How good to see you. Thank you for joining us from Cape Town.
Thanks for having me, Don.
It's my pleasure. So you're joint coordinator of CIB Task Group 81 on global construction data. So I'm hoping we'll talk a little about that subject later on and the role of a coordinator generally in the world of CIB. But first, please start by introducing yourself and saying a little bit about your current role at the University of Cape Town.
Okay. So my name is Abimbola Windapo. I'm a C2 rated researcher with the National Research Foundation of South Africa and Professor of Construction Management at the Department of Construction Economics and Management at the University of Cape Town. I have more than 34 years of experience in teaching, research, and practice in the context of the construction industry, business organizations, and projects starting in 1987, when I began working for a multinational construction company called Bouygues Nigeria Limited as a studies and planning engineer. This was after I graduated at the University of Ife in 1987 with a degree in building. While working on numerous high-profile projects in Nigeria, I was opportune to complete a master's in construction management from the University of Lagos in 1990. So I'm the new joint coordinator of the TG81 Global Construction Data Task Group, as mentioned by Don just now, of the CIB starting in 2021. I'm also the South African spoke lead for the Arua Center of Excellence in Urbanization and Habitable Cities, and the co-spoke leader for the COE for Employment and Skills Development as well. Furthermore, I'm also the editor of the Journal of Construction Business and Management, hosted by the University of Cape Town. I'm a distinguished associate of the Royal Academy of Engineering and the recipient of several awards, including the prestigious NSTF South 32 Engineering Research Capacity Development Science Oscars Award. At the University of Cape Town, I'm involved with teaching, research, and also undertake social responsive activities that improves the well-being of the society.
Right.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you. So, well, let's go right back to the beginning of all of that. So I understand you were the first woman to graduate from the building course from University of Ife. That you must have been very proud.
Yes, I'm humble and I'm proud at the same time. I didn't know I would be able to.
How did you choose to do building, and how come you were the first woman to graduate there?
Yeah, because I was interested in the habitats and in what the homelessness, the hopelessness that I see all around me while I was at the university. I mean, before I even entered the university. So I was very interested in seeing that people are able to house themselves. I saw so, especially in Africa, we find that we have so much of people who are not living in affordable accommodation, people who are living in cities that are not providing their needs, are not conducive environments. So I felt that there's a need, I felt that strong need to be able to contribute to improving the opportunities for people to access adequate housing in Africa, most especially starting from Nigeria. And then when I moved to South Africa, this also I found the same situation in South Africa.
I think we can all understand, what a vital challenge that represents. So, yeah, that's praiseworthy motivation. And so then when you graduated, you mentioned that you went to work for Bouygues, Nigeria. What then attracted you back to back I suppose, to do a master's and then into academia rather than staying on the industry side, if I might put it like that?
Yeah, so what attracted me to academia was that I saw that academia could give me, I wasn't actually achieving what I planned to achieve, that is in terms of housing provision. So I felt that in academia, I'll get more knowledge about those problems. I'll be able to research into those problems. And with that, I'll be able to proffer solutions. And I'll be able to also create this awareness about the problem that we are facing with the knowledge I have, and then maybe offer creative solutions to the problem of housing in Africa.
And you went on to you did masters, and then you carried on straight from the masters into a PhD. Is that right?
No. I did my master's in 1990 when I was still working.
Yeah.
So it gave me a very good foothold, because while I was doing my master's, I could also translate what I was doing practically into what I was learning theoretically. So it really helped me. So that was in 1990. So it was after I joined academia that I now proceeded to do my PhD. And I got my degree in the year 2005.
And how did you then come to move from Nigeria to Cape Town, South Africa?
Yeah, so I saw an opportunity, and then I decided to go for it. I did, because I didn't think I was getting the right exposure in Nigeria, in Lagos. Yeah. So, and then seeing that the University of Cape Town is the #1 university, is the leading university in Africa. And I felt that it will give me the needed exposure. It will enable me to get into this network of researchers and academics on the world stage. So I grabbed the opportunity with both hands, and here I am today.
And clearly, I mean, we'll come on to talk about your profile and your recognition, if you like, around the world. So clearly that goal has been achieved. But can you, looking back, can you reflect on the differences between when you moved from Nigeria to South Africa? What was different in the academic world for you?
Well, not trying to run down Nigeria.
No, let's keep it polite. And yeah.
Well, I'll try as much as possible, because my colleagues will kill me. But there was a lot of difference. And sometimes when I say it, it's like comparing sleeping with being awake, So we could compare it in that sense, in that you see this vibrancy at the University of Cape Town, although most universities in Nigeria are also waking up now. As I mentioned, I'm the member of 2 ARUA, African Research University Alliance Network, and both of these centers of excellence are based in Nigeria. So I'm a member of those networks. So they are also waking up. But at the University of Cape Town, you see that there's this vibrant research culture. So they already have that research culture. So most of the things that I learned and I've acquired came from my being at the University of Cape Town, because the tradition for excellence, the culture is already there. And they strive for excellence every time in whatever they do. There's the organization, there's the planning that goes into research. There are programs on research that are offered at the University of Cape Town to teach you. And then even the CIB I've joined today, that I'm a member of the CIB, is because I'm at the University of Cape Town, because the University of Cape Town is a member of CIB. So things like that gave me that opportunity to be on the world stage as well and to be able to network. So it gave me the network. I was like noticed.
Yes.
When I got to university, I wasn't noticed at University of Lagos, but once I got to University of Cape Town, opportunities to review papers, which I wasn't given such opportunities for top ranking journals. I got those opportunities just for being at the University of Cape Town.
And it's interesting you mentioned that, because I was going to ask you what tips or advice you might have for our student viewers or early career researchers, you know, and one of the, you know, we, as you know, CIB runs this early career researcher network now online, and one of the opportunities that we're trying to provide is advice on how to become a reviewer, you know, and you've mentioned that there. So have you any tips for early career researchers or as I said, PhD students in perhaps looking back on your own career?
Okay, looking back on my career, just because, you know, I mentioned before that I was opportune to work on the field and also to study. So that gave me a kind of, that's kind of being able to compare what I was doing theoretically with what I was learning.
Yes.
In practice. So for the early career researchers, what I could just say is that they also have to read widely and then pay attention. I think that's one very important thing. They have to pay attention. They have to take notes. You have to take notes. And for my students, I always tell them when we go to conference, you have to engage.
Yes.
Engagement is very important. You have to engage. You have to ask questions. You have to challenge assumptions. You have to, that's why you are at the conference. You have to challenge those authorities in the field. And that shows, but they'll say, well, why do we have to ask questions? You have to think of something to ask. You can't just go to a conference and then you wouldn't ask any questions. So that's very important. Ask questions. And this all comes from their knowledge. So if you don't have any knowledge, if you don't have, you didn't pay attention to what you are being taught in class, you don't pay attention to what you are reading, you don't pay attention to the reviews you do, because sometimes this thing comes through the review, you don't pay attention to all these different things, then you wouldn't have that knowledge base that will enable you to ask those challenging questions. So I think it is very important. Take notes, pay attention. When you go to conferences, engage in the conference, and then challenge those assumptions, ask questions. So apart from that, I also try to say they have to be determined, they have to be diligent, they have to be disciplined. So determination and then patience as well, because it takes time. Like a paper, it could take you like a year to write a paper. So you have to be patient as well.
And, you know, two thoughts strike me. Well, one is the fantastic advice for people early in their career. Thank you. Two thoughts strike me. Do you think being patient and the sort of longer term horizon of academia fits with the motivations of young people today, and a slight sort of tendency to want to get quick returns, get, you know, to move on quickly in their lives?
No, I don't. I think there's a, you know, because I think the internet has given us this, and the 4IR has given us this quick return. So you get information quickly. No, unlike in my days when it takes you like 2 weeks to post a letter and then another 2 weeks before you get the response. So like a month before you send that SMS and get the response. So there's this quick returns that students have today. So they want the answer quickly. They want your phone number. They want to be able to WhatsApp you to ask questions without saying, okay, you have to wait because I have other things that I'm doing. But they always want quick returns. So it doesn't, I agree with you, Don. It doesn't fit with the modern day reality.
So your advice is good to sort of manage some of the expectations, I think, of early academia. What about attending conferences? I mean, as you and I speak here, it's the end of August 2021, and you know the world has been in lockdown for the best part of 18 months now due to the global pandemic. Have you noticed how that's hurt research in terms of attendance at conferences and participation in conferences? Do you think do you think we'll recover quickly from that as conferences get going again, face-to-face conferences, I mean, or do you think it's been okay with webinar-based and online conferences? Do you think that's filled the gap adequately?
I don't think, well, I would like to think that webinars have filled the gap, but it's, I don't think it's filled it adequately, although it has to some extent filled the gap. You don't really need to travel. We've seen that we don't really need to travel. We don't really need to spend so much money on going to conferences. But then we've lost the networking part, the physical interactions. So I think this is just a short-term thing. That is the webinar to fill that gap.
And do you think the future mix, do you think there'll be a mix in future that we'll learn to maybe have fewer face-to-face conferences, but more webinars, and that we'll need to work on getting a good, the right mix, an optimum mix of those different formats?
I feel that we'll still have a little bit of webinars.
Yes.
But then I think we'll go back to the conferences with the network opportunities. So we'll still have that webinar. It could still fill certain gap. Maybe you don't want to travel, and then there's the blended conference as well. So there are the webinars fully online, the blended, and then the physical conferences. So it fills certain gaps, but then there's still the gap of interactions, meeting people personally, getting to know them, and then the relationship building that the conference brings.
I think this is a consistent theme, the value of networking, and the fact that you really, I've still not seen it done well online. I've seen attempts, people are putting amazing efforts to try to replicate that networking opportunity with online platforms, but nothing replaces that face-to-face interaction at a conference, and the ad hoc nature of the interaction with somebody that you might not necessarily have expected to get such a great conversation with. So I hope you're right that we get conferences, face-to-face conferences going again. And are you looking forward to the World Building Congress in Melbourne in June 2022? I hope you'll be joining the hundreds of people who will be coming to that conference, the big CIB flagship conference, of course, next year.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it, because that may be the first physical conference I'll have in the, no, not really the first. I've done some blended conferences in Cape Town. But hopefully that will be the first big conference that I'll attend in 2022. All things being equal. So I'm looking forward to it.
Let's hope so. Yes, inshallah, as they say in the Middle East. Let's talk a little bit about your area of research. So you mentioned, I think, your research is interdisciplinary at the moment, but I know you've been looking at housing and you mentioned housing in Nigeria, housing in South Africa, but what are you currently looking at?
So currently we are looking into different things. So as I told you, so it's a multidisciplinary research. So we have ongoing research in the area of building materials, which is something which is close to us trying to find alternate building materials that are cheaper to the conventional materials and that are affordable. So in our quest to provide affordable housing. So we are looking into those building materials, and then we're also looking into there is research that also looks into businesses and organizations. And so I also want to look at why do business fail? We are also researching into why do business, especially construction businesses, why do they fail? And whether the leaders of our construction businesses are the problem, and how can we change this narrative? Because it's also, construction is a source of employment, and we know that it's done through teams. You can't do it alone. You can't do construction alone. So if you don't have good teams, we are going to lose that source of employment. So it's something that my research is also looking into. How do we respond to the high failure rates of many construction companies so that they don't, why are they not surviving, especially in South Africa? South Africa is busy. The government wants to grow or transform the construction industry. But what we find is that most of those small companies that are developing, they don't survive. So what's the reason? Well, so that's what most of my research is all about. Looking into materials, unemployment, skills development, construction industry, construction company development, and alternate building materials.
And do any findings, or is there any early insight that stands out that you'd like to share with people watching, listening today?
Yeah, the most things, the insight we have into these materials is that, yes, there are alternate materials, especially local materials, when we are talking about using maybe local technology in construction. Mm-hmm. So there are alternate materials, but most of these alternate materials are connected with like poverty. So if you say something is local, people tend to connect being local with poverty. So so now we are researching into how can we improve the acceptance of these local materials so that it's used in housing, it's affordable, it's available, it's sustainable. It helps you in contributing to sustainable development in the industry. And in terms of the construction organizations, what we are finding from our research is that leadership does matter. So it's not everybody that will go into construction, but you need to be the right type of leader to be able to start a company and also sustain the trajectory of that company. So it's to build a sustainable company. So those are some of our findings in this area.
Lovely, lovely. Well, and just on that, just thinking about local materials and sourcing of materials and supply chain and so on. So I wonder if that's an area where there's been an impact of, due to the pandemic in your area, or whether there have been any other impacts in your area of research. And if you like, or you know, what impacts might still yet come. You know, can you see any areas which are going to be with us forever, really, that we've changed the industry and it'll never go back, if you like, as a result of the impact of the pandemic?
So COVID-19 has impacted the industry, yes, especially the supply chain. I mean, it's all over the world. So it has affected the supply chain, especially in terms of the imported building materials. So if your industry depends on imported building materials, these supply chains were disrupted by COVID-19, the lockdowns, the closure of borders, and so on. So yes, I think it's a good thing in a way, because it gave countries the opportunities to look inwards, and also industries to know that you have to produce these materials locally for your use in your industry. So, but it has affected our critical projects, our infrastructure projects. It's sort of work, you know, in construction is a no work, no pay kind of it's run on that basis.
Yes.
Affected the workers, especially laborers, were affected because of this payment regime. But it's going to be, I think that we'll still feel the effects of COVID-19 in a positive way, as most industries are restarting and they are able to revise and look at what they've been doing wrong and more creative ways of doing things. I think in the next 10 years, we'll see that we are now going to be more creative in terms of our supply chains and in terms of making use of alternate construction methods, maybe prefabrication, or maybe use of robots in construction, because robots will not get the disease or maybe alternate technology,
Yes.
like 3D printing.
So I can see that, you know, it's helped, if you like, with some of those barriers that you identified in terms of local alternative materials. And as you say, has maybe created the understanding or the recognition of the opportunities of alternative methods. So which would feel like positive impact, albeit that we still need to sort out this basic structural problem that we only pay people on an hour's work basis.
Yes.
So that interruption was always going to hurt. Well, thank you. What, in terms of your research, where do you think your research will go next? What's the next big research question, if you like, for that you could share with us?
The future of my research, I think, is going to look at two aspects of innovation in terms of the organization, our businesses, and technology. And then also the idea of adopting new design, technology, material components, and construction methods. So I think that will be the focus of my research going forward. So how can we develop businesses, our construction organizations, and then what's the best technology?
And will that be particularly in the context of post-pandemic, you know, the impact and how the sector recovers and takes advantage of some of the opportunities that you've identified, that you've talked about?
Yes.
Yes.
So how are we going to develop these different technologies that will suit our construction methods, will make it more efficient and more effective? How do we minimize the resources we use in building these products, having more value for money?
Well, I look forward to us having further conversations in the context of the task group that CIB has got running at the moment on the impact of the pandemic. And so we've a workshop next week, in fact, haven't we? So I look forward to seeing you, seeing that.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
Well, and which brings me nicely on to talk about CIB. You mentioned that involvement in the CIB commissions had helped your work. How specifically did that come about, and how have you particularly found value from CIB?
Yeah, CIB helped my work in that it creates an active research network. So I was invited to the CIB by the Construction Industry Development Board, or those University of Cape Town.
Yes, okay. I used to work with them. Rodney Milford, I remember.
Rodney. Yeah. Okay.
He was. I knew him in my previous job, but he was a very active. In fact, was he? I think he was president of CIB, was he not? Some years ago.
Wow, I didn't even know. So, but I was invited by them. So, because of that active research network created by the CIB, so it gave me the opportunity, and then from the policymakers, which Rodney was one, so he's a policymaker on construction industry development at the CIDB in South Africa. And so they invited me into this fold. And with that, it helped my research because I was able to access information. I was able to access the policymakers. I was able to access other academics researching in the area. And I mean, it was great. My research blossomed from being opportune to join the CIB. So it gave me that sense of belonging to a vibrant building, construction research, and innovative community that also includes people from practice. So that was what makes it so good. There were policymakers involved.
Well, I've just checked as you were speaking. I just checked on our website, and sure enough, Rodney Milford was president of CIB between 2004 and 2007. So we're very grateful for the contribution of Rodney and CIDB, both in engaging yourself in our work, but also generally in engaging what is a very strong contribution from South Africa to the global research network. And most recently, of course, in fact, in March this year, 2021, you became joint coordinator of TG81. So tell us a little bit about their work.
Okay, so the TG81 is about construction, global construction data. So, and I think also Rodney was also part of that group of in the CIB. So it's all about gathering data. We know data is like, is a valuable resource today. So when you talk about data, we talk about the modeling of data and so on. So we need to gather original data that we could use for reference in the construction industry. So most of the things we are doing in the construction industry to help policymakers to know how companies are growing or how people would want one material over the other, or, you know, the social acceptance of different materials, different technologies, is all based on data. So when you hear big data, so we want to grow that data that is going to make it possible for people to reference the use of a global data, that we could compare what is happening in different regions, in different areas of the world. So we have this comparable data that makes it possible for research, not only for research, but also for development and for policy making. So that's what the CIB Global Construction Data, TG81, is all about.
I find that very exciting, and I look forward to working with you actually on exploring how we can best do that. I think the idea of a global database of statistics to help policymakers publish, presumably updated annually, that there are a number of sources that could be drawn on, could be connected with to make that happen. So I look forward to understanding how best we can contribute there as CIB. And in particular, I have a background in benchmarking and key performance indicators in the UK, and your colleague Steve Gunnenberg, your fellow coordinator, and I have worked in the past. So I definitely hope that we can do something really valuable in that area. And thank you for your leadership in stepping forward to lead that in the next phase of TG81's activity.
I thank CIB leadership for the opportunity. Thank you so much.
I look forward to working with you. Yeah, I think we've covered it, but I think it's clear. But I mean, if you were in front of an audience of students or early career researchers, how would you encourage them to make sure they get involved in CIB?
I think I'll describe the value of CIB. I'll describe the value of CIB to them, so for them to improve their performance in research and construction innovation. So because I view that CIB is a global network of researchers, policymakers, and academics. So being plugged into this network is highly essential. It helps us because it has, you have different work groups within CIB. So it helps the student and the early career researcher to know what's going on in terms of the global stage, to be able to get, to be guided by this network of experienced researchers, to network with them. It provides value through international cooperation and information exchange. And then I think CIB also has a valuable database of resources that is of immense use to our members. So anyone who joins CIB will benefit from all this. So benefit from the database of resources a membership of a vibrant community of researchers, and then networking opportunities as well.
And well, thank you for that. And just before we leave this subject of the value generally actually of research and innovation, I mean, how would you sell the importance of research and innovation and investment in research and innovation to the industry and to governments? What are the key messages there?
Yeah, the way I will sell it is that if we look at what Rodney, for example, through the CIDB, which is a government agency, what they have done is that they don't do anything without research. They don't put out policies. They don't make any policies without reference to research. So research fills the gap in knowledge. So what we don't know. So we can't just make certain policies without having the facts. So the gray areas is supposed to be clarified through research. So a government that does not base their policies on research will be making a mistake, because it could just be basing policies on the wrong thing, to just be on maybe some fanciful ideas or some suppositions which have not been tested. So that research is very important, because it gives us those facts on which policies are based. And so the governments, the policymakers, and that I learned this from CIDB in South Africa.
Right, that's a very good example, and very powerfully made. All of which leads to sort of evidence-based policymaking, I think, is one of the mantras, isn't it? And
yes, thanks for that word, evidence policymaking.
Often talked about, perhaps sometimes in some other parts of the world, anyway, perhaps slightly less adopted in practice, but definitely a target, and as you say, very much a crucial impact of research and to promote its value. Well, Abimbola, thank you very much. But before we finish, we like to end all our chats by talking about what we call your top opportunity. And by this, I mean, in your field of expertise and what we've covered in terms of housing and affordable housing and so on, what would you say is the top opportunity, or perhaps top challenge might be a better word for it, that politicians and policymakers around the world need to be focused on in our sector?
Yeah, so in our sector, I think the top challenge for housing and materials, business organizations, and in creating this business around construction, I think it's the income levels of the citizens, especially when you look at things like housing. So most of them are unable to afford the housing. There's no way, like when half of the population is earning more than $1, yes, or maybe even $30, how do they want to afford? So that is one thing, especially that's something African governments have not been able to realize, is that housing must be subsidized. So that's one of the top challenge, especially for governments in Africa and maybe all over the world too. How do you subsidize housing? I know it's done in South Africa, but it's not a lot, but it's being done, but it might not be sufficient. It might not cover all the people who need that affordable housing. But in most African countries, there's no subsidy at all. So how do you bridge the gap?
Yes. So understanding affordability levels, then bridging the gap to what it's actually possible for housing to be built for, and maybe, well, let's hope that some of the alternative methods that the pandemic may give a stimulus to bring the price of housing down, and along with subsidies allow us to close that gap.
And conducive environments too, not only housing, but the conducive environments.
Well, on that note, Abimbola, I'm really grateful for your time today. Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, CIB's engine room well, I suppose our most fundamental core are the members of CIB or the universities, including University of Cape Town and the research that is carried out in those member institutions. But within the global network of CIB, it's the working commissions and task groups that really, are the core activity. So it's been great to talk to a joint coordinator of one of our most active task groups, and a task group with ambition and with a goal for what you'd like to achieve. I've really enjoyed that. I've really enjoyed learning about your background and your current levels of research. So a massive thank you to you on behalf of CIB and all our viewers today.
Thank you so much, Don, for having me. I really appreciate it. I hope you were able to get good answers.
Absolutely terrific. Thank you. It's been a lovely conversation. I mean, to our audience, for more information on this event, on Abimbola's work, or for details of all our commissions, on TG81, on her appointment as joint coordinator in March 2021, please go to the website. There's loads of information. Please do check it out. That's the end of today's edition of CIB in Conversation. I'm Don Ward, with thanks again to our guest, Professor Windapo. It's goodbye for now from CIB. Thank you.